What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the channel Sports, Life, and Politics TV. I'm Samuel Koppel, YouTube's #1 couch detective, and I'm here for the news. And I'm going to be going to several clips today. One, Israel advanced to Gaza using tanks. Obviously, a ground invasion has started to begin. There was a Senate hearing in the United States on supplying more financial aid to Ukraine and Israel, and I'm going over this Robert Card, this another mass shooter. And the reason why I haven't been on this channel in a while is because I was suspended for 2 weeks from YouTube. Now, it's because I covered this Israel and Hamas war, and some of the things I said probably rang a little bit too true, and they went back a whole year, and they just suspended for these 2 videos that I made right here. They suspended my channel because of a video I made on cannibalism over a year ago. Now, obviously, this is the second time that they deemed my channel because I've discussed Israel. Will I stop discussing it? No, because they didn't suspend it for these 2 things. But I didn't say nothing egregious in either one of these videos. But sometimes when you put the title, Israel knew this attack was coming, and somebody works at YouTube, they're not going to like that. But it's true because our defense secretary said those attacks were coming. He said they tried to warn Israel. And Israel, in my personal opinion, already knew that they were coming. Benjamin Netanyahu, the president of Israel, was under a lot of pressure before this war started. His poll numbers were very low. His support was very low. They tried to get rid of the Supreme Court in Israel. The people did not like it. The people did not want it. He just didn't have a lot of support. So this war came at the perfect time for him. Some people call it luck. Some people call it perfect timing. But do I think a lot of this stuff was allowed to happen so that they can move forward with this? Absolutely. If you want to know if the New World Order or the Great Reset is happening or which side and who's on what side, this will let you know the United States is on the side of this, because the United States, not only are they handing out a boatload of money, but they're also handing out a lot of weapons and ammunition and missiles and bombs. And the reason why the United States is so eager to do that, so they can buy new bombs. You got to realize we still have surpluses from Vietnam, the Gulf War. We still have surpluses from these past 2 wars. We want new and better technologically advanced weapons. In order to do that, you have to get rid of these weapons. But I'm going to go over several clips. Let's start with this first clip. Israel advances to Gaza using tanks. Let's take a look.
But we begin here. Israel's military says it hit hundreds of Hamas targets in Gaza in a 24-hour period. Palestinian officials say dozens of people were killed in airstrikes overnight and Monday afternoon when strikes hit 2 homes and a wedding hall. This comes 1 day after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu refused to even consider a ceasefire, saying, quote, "There is a time for peace, but this is a time for war." CBS News foreign correspondent Ian Lee has more.
The UN says more than 400 children are dying or being injured in Gaza every day, but Israel is continuing to ignore those calls for a ceasefire as they battle Hamas in search for hostages. On Monday, Israeli forces rescued a kidnapped soldier in Gaza. Ori Megadish has been reunited with her family. She was just one of 240 hostages now believed to be in Gaza. But for the family of 23-year-old Shani Luke, there's heartbreak. Israeli officials confirmed the young German-Israeli woman's death after she was among those taken by Hamas from a music festival. Hamas also released a propaganda video showing 3 hostages. Israeli officials say it was likely filmed under duress. Now, this comes as Israel is stepping up its offensive in Gaza. The fighting there has been described as fierce as Israel moves around Gaza City. Now, the director of the UN office in charge of coordinating humanitarian affairs told the UN Security Council yesterday that they simply do not have enough essential supplies to provide for the survival of the people of Gaza. Yesterday, only 26 trucks of aid made it into the territory. That's far short of what they say is needed. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department says its last charter flight to get Americans out of Israel has left and doesn't have any more planned due to low demand. Lilia?
Ian Lee, thank you. On Capitol Hill, protesters disrupted today's Senate appropriations hearing for funding for Israel and Ukraine. That was what the hearing was about. Demonstrators interrupted Secretary of State Antony Blinken's opening statements about the U.S. response to the war in Israel.
And let me say this too while I'm thinking about it. The United States have a habit of playing good cop, bad cop. They have a habit of funding both sides to fight one another. They've done this several times. They've done it with the Native Americans and Indians. They've done it as recently, that's documented, with the Russians and the Iranians when they were at war in the 80s. They've done it time and time again where they've pitted two sides against each other and given both sides weapons. So I wouldn't be shocked if I wouldn't be shocked if somehow, some way, that America wasn't doing that again. Now this is alleged. Now we know, like I said before, America has just recently given the Iranians billions and billions of dollars, and then all of a sudden this happens. And we know that Iran backs Hezbollah, Hamas, Yemen, and other places. And all of a sudden, Yemen has joined this war. So, I'm gonna go over that little clip too. But what I'm saying, some of these things that you might think is crazy really ain't that crazy. It's really not that far out that the United States will be involved in this. Because you got to realize, even within our own government, they poll numbers are terrible. Nobody trusts the government no more. Nobody trusts the Congress that they can get anything done. The Senate, the president is all out of whack. His poll numbers it's through the floor. So a lot of these things are done as distractions and done to fund the military industrial complex to make more weapons, make more money, and keep this whole thing going and keep you completely distracted. And this can be a precursor for World War III. We just never know. Will this thing escalate? Yeah, I'm at about 90% this thing will escalate. Yeah, I'm pretty high on escalation at this point.
Secretary Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin are hoping to garner support for the administration's massive $105 billion emergency aid request for Ukraine and Israel. Both say this money will help protect civilians.
This funding will enable us to tackle grave humanitarian needs created by autocrats and terrorists.
I've repeatedly made clear to Israel's leaders that protecting civilians in Gaza is both a moral responsibility and a strategic imperative.
CBS News senior.
And one thing I noticed about the defense secretary, he's very, I don't want to say nonchalant, but he's very bland and direct, which is great for a defense secretary because no matter what he's saying, it doesn't seem that bad. He just comes across, his voice is always the same. So I see why they made him defense secretary. He delivers the message in a way that's palatable where you can actually accept it. But, people are still up in arms. Nobody, at this point in this country, you can't get a consensus on nothing. Nobody agrees with everything. So there's always going to be people who just totally disagree. But I'm just saying, as a Secretary of Defense, listening to him, he makes it like you could actually, if it wasn't for Biden and all this stuff, yeah, you could actually listen to him. He could actually say you a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. They picked the right man for the job on that.
White House correspondent Weijia Zhang joins us from the White House. Weijia, good to see you. Talk to us about why it's significant that both secretaries are there making their case for this bill, and what roadblocks does the funding still face?
Lily, it's always good to be with you. So these secretaries are really there to represent one message from President Biden and from the administration, which is that this massive bill, even though it addresses several different regions in the country, it all boils down to one thing, which is the national security of the United States. And so they are trying to lay out the case for why, even though they are talking about funding for...
And as you can see, $14.3 billion for Israel, $61.4 billion for Ukraine. We've given so much money to the Ukraine. It's mind-boggling at this point. $2 billion for Indo-Pacific security assistance, $3.4 billion for submarine investments. And them submarines, some bad motherfuckers. Hey, they be underwater for 3 months at a time. That's crazy. $14.5 for border needs. What exactly does border needs mean? Does that mean letting more immigrants in? Does that mean building border walls? Exactly what does that mean? But the number one number you're looking up at there is $61.4 billion for Ukraine. And half of that money goes to restock and resupply from the old ass weapons we give them. Because you have to realize these weapons have a shelf life. Not only do you want to give them away, but they have to be used. So you're not just giving them away. These bombs got to be dropped. These bullets got to be shot, Jack. So very important. 14.3 billion for Israel. Israel don't need another goddamn dime. But we give Israel money every year regardless. So to add this on top of what we already give Israel, it's just astronomical at this point. I don't even know where they're getting this money from.
Ukraine, Israel, the Indo-Pacific, and the border right here at home, that they're all linked together. And they said today that this is all one big fight, and that's why they do not believe it should be peeled apart, which is one big roadblock that you asked about that they're already facing, because the newly elected Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson has said that he does not believe these things should be bundled together. He's actually already introduced a bill that would offer $14.3 billion to Israel in funding. And he says that that should be left alone while, the Congress sorts out how to fund these other things as well. But he also said that they're not going to be writing what he called a blank check. And so this is going to be a tough road ahead for the administration. As a reminder, what they are asking for is over $100 billion in this massive aid package.
So the proposal itself goes beyond Ukraine and Israel. What else is at stake if the funding doesn't get approved?
I think it's important to distinguish when we talk about $60 billion for Ukraine, what that actually means, because it sounds like a lot more than Israel. But the thing is, Lilia, that the U.S. has supplied so much to Ukraine that it needs to replenish its stockpiles, its own stockpiles. So that's...
There it is. God damn it, there it is. We need to replenish our own stockpiles. So they have to, like I said, all of these missiles and bombs and grenades and all this older technology that we're just stockpiling, it has to be moved out. It's like, say you're a doomsday prepper and you accumulating all this water and bottled water and noodles. You eventually got to use that and eat that and put some new shit in there. You can't just have the same old stuff. It'll go bad. It won't be usable after a while. So they have to use all the shit has to be used. Like I said, it can't just be given away. It has to be used. Sometimes these wars are started just to replenish. Think about how sick that sounds. That's sick. Babies and women and children and innocent people die so you can replenish your stockpile. That's disgusting.
Would be for, and also giving money to countries like Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific, and as we mentioned, the border security as well. And the administration thought that would be enough to, appease some Republicans who have been resistant to considering this. But so far, it seems like, many Republicans want to see separate bills instead of this one big one that the cabinet secretaries are trying to push through today.
That's right. I mean, it's interesting to see those divisions. Having heard Mitch McConnell tell Margaret Brennan...
And yeah, they call that pork. Yeah, they try to wrap... The money is really, right now, supposed to be for Israel. But then they want to wrap the Ukraine and Indo-Pacific and submarines and, just on and on. You want to wrap all this other stuff in. And that's why I do say it's a blank check. Because they'll say they'll say 105 billion. Before you know it, it'll be 120 and somehow money will go missing and go here and go there. But it's never really missing it, especially if you start checking people's pockets.
How much in support he was and how needed it is for the U.S. to basically replenish its weaponry. So let's turn to...
See how quick she said that?
He's addressing the economy today. How is he juggling concerns?
I don't have to go into what Biden is doing. Biden is who he is. There is one more clip of protesters disrupt Senate hearing, which is the same thing they basically just covered in that channel. So I'm going to go on to Robert Card. I think that's his name. I know his last name is Card. Maine residents grow frustrated as details about government come to light. And I swear to God, you guys, I have hit these mass shooters out of the park. When people first start watching my channel, I have people who watch my channel regularly. All of them can tell you for a fact that when they first start watching, they was 50-50 on some of the stuff I said. Some of the stuff they were like, Some of the stuff like, yeah, that sounds about true. But now, over time, they've come to realize that I was 100% right. A lot of these people, allegedly 100%, are under MK Ultra mind control. They're going into these psych wards. They're under medication. They're receiving certain kind of treatment. what you call it, psychedelic treatment, using all type of different new drugs and drugs we had never heard of. All of a sudden, these people come out of these places, and all of a sudden they want to buy guns and they want to do a mass shooting. There have been crazy people for a very long time, and this has never been the case. But all of a sudden now it's the case. For you to want to go murder 20, 30 people at once, that's just not a mental break. Somebody has to mentally break you and take you to that place to give you the courage to even do that shit, to even want to do that. But like I said before, they have the mass shooter starter kit, an AR-15, and a pistol. Out of all the guns on the planet Earth, why is it always the AR-15 with mass shooter after mass shooter after mass shooter? Why? You know why? Because they want to ban the assault weapon. Because if you ban that, you get all the rest of them banned. Because you notice they never, and I mean never, ever, 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 ever have an AK-47. Always an AR-15. Let's take a look.
Those warrants and documents just released within the last hour give us a really unsettling look into what was going on with Robert Card in the weeks and months before the shooting and the hours and days after. Tonight, we're learning it was Robert Card's sister who called police, identifying him as the shooter at just-in-time bowling. Officials say she made...
And if you look at all these cases, every single time, a family member tried to, I swear, I'm gonna take all my mass shooting videos and I'm gonna put it in a category playlist so you can kind of go through them and go through timeline. And I've said the same thing. Every single one of these shooters, a parent or somebody tried to notify police, and the police was called out, and it's always some Barney Fife wacky ass shit where we'd have no idea. Nobody knows what's going on. All of a sudden, everybody's so confused. Everybody IQ goes down to a 0. Intelligence level is non-existent. But every time, there's all these clues right beforehand. And I ain't talking about small clues, major clues that this was coming.
Less than 40 minutes after police released a surveillance video of Card. We're also learning he targeted some of his victims and specifically chose those businesses. According to the arrest warrant, Card's brother says Card had gone through a bad breakup in February, saying, quote, Robert had been in a relationship the past few months before the woman ended the relationship. Robert met her at a cornhole competition at Schmenge's.
Well, I'm not laughing at the situation with the mass shooting, but I mean, two people meet at a cornhole competition. A mass shooting is following. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, who in the hell's going to a cornhole competition? I mean, somebody's going to die.
Second location where he opened fire. As we learn this new information, we also know Robert Card had been on law enforcement's radar for months.
The law enforcement said he had been on their radar for months, and they did nothing. When I say nothing, I mean zip, zitch, zero, nada. Because they were told not to do nothing.
Frustration growing among those who live in Lewiston as details come out about Robert Card and what law enforcement knew about him. Documents from the Saginaw Sheriff's Office show the man accused of killing 18 people during a shooting spree at a bowling alley and restaurant last week was on their radar for months.
We looked at what was done as it aligns with our policy.
Documents show Card's family met with a deputy in May.
There's Barney Fife.
The 24-year-old was paranoid, hearing voices, and recently picked up 10 to 15 guns. In September, Card's fellow Army reservist contacted the sheriff's office, quote, concerned that Card was going...
He picked up 10 to 15 guns after being in a psychiatric ward. You telling me that's by coincidence? Ain't no goddamn way. Look at that again.
Hearing voices and recently picked up 10 to 15 guns. In September, Card's fellow Army reservist contacted the sheriff's office, quote, concerned that Card was going to snap and commit a mass shooting.
So his fellow military buddy said, hey man, this man is going to snap and commit a mass shooting. Was he guessing that? Robert Card told him that. He didn't guess that. Robert Card told him he was going to do that. Am I alleging that? Yes. But when your buddy goes to the police on you, it's because you've said something so egregious, so alarming, that you felt compelled to go to the police. Come on now, y'all.
Sheriff's office also knew Card had spent time in a psychiatric hospital but never took his guns. Today, the sheriff defended the
This is comical. Not the mass shooting, but just the how I know this is MK Ultra mind control, and a lot of people are in on it, especially at the top within the police department and the psychiatric ward are in cahoots together, obviously. Listen to what they just said one more time.
and commit a mass shooting. The sheriff's office also knew Card had spent time in a psychiatric hospital but never took his guns. Today,
Wow.
the sheriff defended the decision not to use the state's yellow flag law, which removes a person's guns if they're considered a danger to themselves or others.
People,
Oh my God, I almost fell out my chair. If you don't believe what I'm saying now, if you don't start to get an understanding that, God damn it, that man's on to something. He's been on to something for years now. They got a yellow flag law, and they still didn't take his guns. After a military man said this man's gonna snap. His sister, the police, he was on the police's radar. And none of the law, every proper procedure was failed. Look, I always say you can have coincidence, but you can't. Every procedure is not going to fail. Not at once. Hell to the no. Hell to the no. Your alternator, starter, and tire ain't going flat all at the same time. Your alternator not going out. The starter, the tire going on flat. Your left tail light popped all at once. It's impossible for everything to fail at once like that without something happening.
well, why did you force that contact? Why didn't you look at him?
Here one more time.
Which removes a person's guns if they're considered a danger to themselves or others.
People wonder, well, why didn't you force that
Look at
contact?
Barney
Why
Fox.
didn't you look at him? You know, there are certain rights.
As the internal
You see how they edited that and cut that off? They did not question him in depth to ask him, hey man, we have this law in the books. Every flag that you can possibly have had went off. Every alarm had went off. Why didn't you take his gun? He just said, well, there's rights. And then they quickly went on to another scene and the lady continued talking.
being done within the sheriff's department, some family of the victims say red flags should have been caught a number of times.
Of course.
The doctors, first of all, on this particular one, when a doctor gets someone in there like that, they need to stand up and say, hey, look, we got to red flag this guy.
Well, I'm sorry, buddy. You dead wrong. The doctors did their job. Fuck you talking about? The doctor's job was to send him out there allegedly to do what he did. Allegedly. Because I always ask, what's the side effects of these medications that they give them? What kind of treatment are they receiving in there? We never know. The psych ward is the most mysterious place on the planet. The psych ward is like the bottom of the goddamn ocean. We have no idea what's going on in there. You know why? Because none of us want to go in there. And none of us want to know. So they're doing some unthinkable things in there. Allegedly.
Tonight, we're also learning the rifle found in Card's car could have accommodated the type of silencer he tried to buy in August. That attempt failed when he went to pick it up and self-reported that he had been checked into a mental institution.
Hey, and he tried to buy a silencer. Shout out to my homeboy Alonzo. Alonzo, he tried to buy a silencer. Really? So many alarms should have went off at so many different times in this. It's just not a coincidence that they all slipped through and his mass shooting happened. There's just no way. A silencer in Maine, where they had a yellow flag law. Police was he's on police radar. Sister called the police. Military buddy called the police.
That gun shop.
He bought 15 guns. None of that shit sounded any alarms. Of course it did. It sounded all type of alarms. But they wanted this to happen.
Owner then refused
Allegedly.
to sell the silencer to him. Live in Lewiston, Maine, Emily Maha, WCB.
I mean, some of this shit is so, to me, it's so obvious. So very obvious. Let's take a look at this. Israel confirmed strike on refugee camp. Look, do I think Israel and the United States want this thing to escalate? Each passing day to me, the answer is more and more yes. I told you I'm up to 90% on escalation. By tomorrow, might be 92. Because I'm going off what I'm seeing. I'm going off what's happening and who's involved in the things that are being allowed to happen. The United States, there's no way you can sit back and support a strike on a refugee camp. That sounds nuts. This is where you use special forces at. You don't drop bombs on refugee camps. This can cause escalation. Let's take a look at the clip.
This morning, Gaza's largest refugee camp now leveled and many lives lost after an Israeli air assault. These doctors saying there are injured everywhere. Many working hastily to rescue survivors, including children from the rubble. ABC News determining the airstrikes caused craters consistent with bombs dropped from an aircraft. The Israel Defense Forces confirming it carried out the strikes and that it killed a top Hamas leader and other militants. The IDF accusing Hamas of using civilians as human shields. ABC's Ian Panel pressing an IDF official on why the Jabalia camp was targeted.
There were secondary explosions and that the subterranean infrastructure also exploded or imploded as a result of some kind of secondary explosion, and that there are quite a lot of casualties in the area.
So, as Israelis, you're not going to use no ground force. You're not going to use no special forces. You're not going to try to use manpower to go in there and get them and, minimize civilian casualty. We're just going to drop a bomb on a refugee camp. I mean, great idea. I mean, if you want escalation, and when you make these kind of strikes and moves, it lets me know that you want escalation. You have to. You have to want it.
Civilian casualties. At this stage, I can't confirm that. I assess that is the case.
Israel also bombing southern Gaza near the Rafah crossing into Egypt. Egyptian media reporting the Rafah gates could open to injured Palestinians today. The U.S. hoping the same applies to Americans.
We have about 400 American citizens and their family members, so it's roughly 1,000 people who are stuck in Gaza.
On Capitol Hill, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
That's his name, Lloyd Austin.
To approve defense aid for Israel amid several interruptions from anti-war protesters holding signs and hands painted red. Secretary Blinken also announcing plans to travel to Israel Friday for continued talks with Israeli leaders about the Hamas war.
Escalation looks inevitable at this point. They say Yemen has gotten involved in the war. Yemen is obviously backed by Israel too. I mean, not Israel, I'm sorry, by Iran too. And Iran is, through back channels, are supported by the United States, / Russia, / China. So it looks like, a lot of these people, a lot of these things are happening at the top, all in cahoots to push us towards a particular outcome. Let's take a look at this. Yemen has joined the war with Israel and Hamas. Unbelievable.
Yemen's Houthi movement says it's fired a wave of missiles and drones against Israel. Now,
let me ask you this. If Yemen, a very small country, I remember here a few years back, Yemen was at war with Saudi Arabia, and there was all type of atrocities by Saudi Arabia by killing the Yemens, and it was starvation, and it was terrible. There was a lot of things that was happening in Yemen. But all of a sudden, Yemen has the guts and the gumption to fire missiles at Israel and the United States without no retaliation. That's why I say some of this, come on, y'all, some of this stuff is just common sense. There's no way Yemen has the guts on its own to fire missiles at Israel and the United States. And the United States talking about we intercepted and so you didn't send nothing back. All they got is a few 1994 Jeeps and a couple missiles here and there. We can knock that shit out in a week just by bombing. We don't even have to attack their military. We can just attack all their military installations. Not even all, just the main ones, a few of them, and their military is debilitated. I didn't even know Yemen had a military. I'm not even going to even bullshit you. I thought after Saudi Arabia got done wiping their ass, well, they didn't have no military no more.
Fully entering the war between Israel and Islamist militants in Gaza, and cementing fears by world powers, the conflict spilling into more countries.
Of course it
The
is.
declaration came after Israel's military said it intercepted 2 objects in separate incidents around the Red Sea. This was a Houthi parade filmed by Reuters in Yemen in September, only days before the Hamas attacks on Israel. On Tuesday, its military spokesperson said the launch was their 3rd since the conflict began, seeming to confirm that it was behind an incident on October 19th. The U.S. Navy said it had intercepted 3 cruise missiles over the Red Sea, and a drone attack on October 28th, which resulted in blasts in Egypt, blamed on the Houthis by Israel.
I don't believe shit he said. That looked like a damn robot. That man didn't blink one time. I just watched that whole thing. That man didn't blink one time. You think I'm bullshitting? Watch this shit. This man didn't blink one time. I don't believe this shit. This shit is staged. They just staged this.
On Tuesday, its military spokesperson said the launch was their 3rd since the conflict began, seeming to
He still ain't blinked.
that it was behind an incident on October 19th. The U.S. Navy said it had intercepted 3 cruise missiles over the Red Sea, and a drone attack on October 28th, which resulted in blasts in Egypt, blamed on the Houthis by Israel.
That man didn't blink once.
They would continue to launch against Israel until, quote, Israeli aggression ceases. The Houthis are part of what's called the Axis.
That man was on an 86 motorbike. Man, if you don't get these troops, listen to me. I think I could take them guys. You give me 7 niggas from Chicago, 3 niggas from Chicago, 4 niggas from Dallas, and a couple niggas from LA. We could take these goddamn guys. Look at this pathetic ass. This ain't even a military. This is just a Terry. They ain't got the meal on their shit. This is a Terry. If you don't get this Terry out of here.
Resistance, an alliance of armed groups backed by Iran, and includes Hamas.
Man, that man wasn't even aiming. He almost fell.
Sent to show their military drills.
Hey man. They look like they ain't ate in a week. Man, this is not even a military. This is a stage propaganda event, allegedly.
Israel's military says it will remain focused on Gaza, and that the Houthis are just one of many of Iran's proxies.
Man, that looked like some rockets you make at fucking science lab. What the? You got to be kidding me. Israel said they not even worried about the people. They not even going to focus on that. Number 1, they ain't 8 in a week. Number 2, the people can barely run without falling. And I don't know how far you're going to get without no gasoline on an 86 motorbike. Get out of Dodge. You got to be fucking kidding me. Some of this stuff is just pure propaganda. Stop it.
Relationship that the Houthis have denied.
They name don't even sound scary. Houthis. If you don't get the Houthi out of here, what in the Houthi is going on out here? Let's take a look at this. As cold weather looms, Chicago's looking for migrant housing. Listen to me. Now, you're a migrant and you came all the way from Guatemala. And all of a sudden you get to Chicago and you ain't got nowhere to stay. Guatemala don't sound half bad. Guatemala don't sound half bad. Hey, if you from down there, Mexico, Guatemala, you ain't seen shit till you seen the Chicago winter. That wind liable to blow their ass back to Tijuana. Let's take a look at the clip.
Cronus at City Hall, where the pressure is on to get migrants into shelter. And while the city eyes an architectural icon, a winterized encampment is one step closer to becoming a reality.
As Chicagoans who know what to expect bundle up, thousands of new arrivals will be experiencing the cold for the very first
He had a Chicago dog in his hand. Hell was he headed?
time. The CTA is providing warming buses at police districts, a long-term solution.
Hey man, you ain't came all the way from Guatemala to play a ghost on a bus. I know damn well you ain't did that. They ought to be ashamed. They got these people up here on a warming bus. And it is Halloween, but he's not even in costume. He's just trying to stay warm. This man is a ghost on a goddamn bus. This is wacky as it gets.
Are desperately needed.
We have minors in police stations in the streets. This is an emergency response.
Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez chairs the Committee on Housing and Real Estate. On Monday, it signed off on the city's plan to purchase land at the corner of 115th and Halsted. The former Jewel parking lot could become a migrant base camp built by Garter World. But community members are put.
Well, the last thing you want is a glorified concentration camp in the middle of your neighborhood. Look how they just done popped up these tents. And I ain't gonna even lie. It borderlines look like a pop-up prison. I ain't bullshitting. If you took it up and you looked at a straight overview, it'll look like a penitentiary, a smaller version of a penitentiary. Look at that shit. They even got a funky-ass watchtower over there on that blue part. What is going on? What are they doing?
Back.
I understand the frustration, I understand the anger. The city of Chicago, the south side and the west side have been neglected for generations. And unfortunately now we have another federal problem that should not be a problem if we have coordination.
Among their concerns, neighbors fear that a mixed-use housing development in the works, called the Morgan Park Commons, won't see the light of day. It would create hundreds of jobs. The Far South Side Community Development Corporation tells us the city has assured them they'll still be able to break ground next fall. In River North,
next fall, them people will never see that shit. You'll never see them migrants will have that little pop-up prison before you get that. You can guarantee that shit.
migrants could soon be calling Marina City home. Officials are looking to convert Hotel Chicago, located in part of the towers, into a shelter for as many as 1,000 asylum seekers. It's a plan Alderman Brendan Riley writes in an e-letter that he is vehemently opposed to, saying it, quote, defies logic, given that it's just steps away from a problematic red line stop and blocks from the temporary casino.
Let me say this, for the migrants, when that Chicago winter hit, and if your ass ain't got nowhere to stay, hey man, you might be on the first thing smoking on the Greyhound back across Mexico, because or Guatemala or wherever the hell these people have came from. But that Chicago winter is no joke. Yeah, that shit will freeze you up and dry your funky ass right on out, and that wind will gust your ass all the way down somewhere down towards Nebraska, and then they winter hawk will blow your ass to Texas, and then Texas will freeze your ass right back into Mexico. So, look, they might take an ice slide all the way back down to Guatemala. Who knows? But something's got to shake. Something's got to shake. I know they ain't came up here to play a ghost on a bus.
City Council will vote on the purchase of that South Side encampment site. Reporting in the Loop, Casey Cronus, Fox 32, Chicago.
Well, them Southside Chicago niggas is already fighting each other. Get ready to be fighting gang-banging Guatemalans next. Because once they get settled in and they see how it is and how shit goes, they'll be shooters before you know it. It'll just be another hood in Chicago called the Guatemalan boys or whatever the hell you want to call them. But we're going to end this last clip off with sports. James Harden, I'm going to start doing that. Last clip of the day, I'm going to start ending it off with some kind of sports. James Harden was traded to the Clippers. Now, James Harden has been on the move more than these motherfucking migrants right here. Only difference is James Harden's bank account looks totally different than theirs. But there's no doubt James Harden is always on the move and always on the go. Now, do I feel like the Clippers needed him? I'm like 70% no, 30% yes. The only reason I'm at 30% yes is because the Clippers have an inordinate amount of injuries every year. Kawhi is always out. Paul George is always out. Something's always going wrong with the Clippers. They're like snake bitten. But they have James Harden and Russell Westbrook on the same team, and both of these guys turn the ball over at a high rate. But James Harden is a much better passer than Russell Westbrook. And he's a little more consistent than Russell Westbrook has been over the past 3 or 4 years. But Russell Westbrook has started out this season fantastic. But obviously they made the trade and they had to do it. But let's take a look at this clip.
Trade deadline out there on the gridiron, but the NBA making moves saying, listen, we will be the talk of the town because James Harden is on the move. From there, goodbye, Philly. I'm headed out to LA getting that.
And as you can see down here, James Harden traded to the Clippers for Marquise Morris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, Kenyon Martin Jr., and multiple first-round picks. I think a couple of second-round pick swaps. Is that a good deal for the 76ers? You bet your sweet ass it is, because they wasn't getting nothing no better than that. I'm surprised they got the 2 first-round picks, because he made this trade obvious that he made it obvious he didn't want to be with the 76ers no more. But I will give the 76ers credit. They held out as long as they could and made the best deal possible for them. None of these players they got are great players. Kenyon Martin Jr. does have a potential to be a key piece, like a key role. Him and Robert Covington. Nick Batum is a little long in the tooth. Marquise Morris is a little long in the tooth. But they still both wily veterans who can help a team, especially a team like the 76ers who need, you can use more depth. But overall, this trade, I don't really like it at all. I like it for the 76ers, but for the Clippers, I don't know. It just don't seem like they needed him. But like I said, a lot of injuries happen with the Clippers, and James Harden might be there and can help keep the boat steady while those guys are out, because Kawhi is going to miss some part of the game. Kawhi is like Tyron Smith for the Cowboys to tackle. Listen to me. You can guarantee he's going to get hurt, and you can guarantee he's going to miss some games. You just hope he's there at the end, going into the playoffs, get momentum, team chemistry, and you can go on a run, because the Clippers have the talent to win the championship. There's no doubt about it. But James Harden traded to the Los Angeles Clippers. He's from LA. I know he's extremely happy, extremely excited about it, but he's extremely excited when he got to Brooklyn. He was extremely excited when he got to the 76ers. Now he's extremely excited when he's getting to the Los Angeles Clippers. But I think it's a little more genuine this time, because he is from LA. And he's getting to play with a great coach in Ty Lue, and he's getting to play with great players, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this season goes and see how James Harden plays this year. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Sports, Life, and Politics TV. I'm Samuel Koppel, YouTube's #1 couch detective. I'm here for the news. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. I just took your ass on one hell of a YouTube ride. Peace.